Welcome to my show, When Everyone Wins, where a key goal I have for you is shifting from power over and under to power within and between. I'm your host, Judy Ryan. In each episode, I'll share my knowledge from decades in workplace culture transformation and leadership development as the founder and CEO of LifeWork Systems. I'll help you build trust and emotional and social intelligence. My show, When Everyone Wins, is about creating a life you love and helping others do the same. Welcome, everyone. So happy to have you back for our show. The primary objective of this show is to reach leaders who are hungry to learn about the value of a healthy culture of win-win that results in well-adjusted, psychologically safe, confident, high-performing individuals and teams that share power and create positive experiences together. Whether it's in business or on a basketball court, how do we maintain an attitude that supports everyone's dignity, creates collaborative teamwork and trust, even with the other team, and offers opportunities for all? Well, I think you'll find that my guest today is uniquely qualified to speak about all of this. His name is Coach Matt Doherty. Let me tell you a little bit more about him. Before I get into the details of his bio, I want you to know what's said about Coach Doherty by those who know and have worked with him. They say that he has always been fantastically talented, outstanding in his ability to lead and coach, a fierce competitor, and a person of great integrity. Most importantly, he's described as a thoughtful leader and everything you could ask for in a friend. Definitely a champion in my book. Here's a little bit more about him professionally. Matt is currently a nationally recognized motivational speaker, best-selling author, media personality, and executive coach. In addition to doing keynotes and trainings, he guides corporations, C-suite managers, sales executives, and sports coaches to develop their leadership skills, their culture, and their team dynamics. This is an outcome of his leadership journey, which took him to the UVA Darden School of Business and the Wharton School. To many people, they know Matt Doherty because of his role as a starter for the 1982 National Championship basketball team with Michael Jordan at UNC, where he began his leadership journey under the legendary Dean Smith. He went on to be the head coach at Notre Dame in North Carolina, and in 2001, he led the team to the ACC regular season championship and was named the AP National Coach of the Year. He was also the head coach at FAU, Florida Atlantic University, and SMU, Southern Methodist University, in addition to working with ESPN, the Indiana Pacers, and the Atlantic 10 Conference. Coach Matt is committed to sharing universal teachings and lessons from the basketball court to the boardroom, all with actionable ideas that work. I love that. His mission is to learn and grow every day. For me, all of this and more is why I'm so delighted to talk with you today. Coach, welcome. How are you?
Well, I'm great, Judy. That was one of the nicest introductions I've ever received. I was just a little disappointed you stopped. I was really taking it all in. I don't get much of that anymore, so it's kind of nice to hear it. So thank you.
You're
In all
welcome.
seriousness, yes.
You're welcome. That's your love language, at least one of them, huh?
Yeah, words of affirmation. Yes.
Yes, yes.
Words of affirmation. Yeah, seriously, the 5 love languages.
Yes.
Like,
Well, you're fulfilling one of mine. Mine is acts of service, and you doing this is an act of service, not only to me, but to our whole audience. So thank you.
Well, we got a flywheel going here. You say nice things about me, I'll do your podcast. Boom. This is easy.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, Matt, I brought up to you that I heard something you said just about a week ago, and I love this. It reminded me of the way I raised my children, because I have 5 children.
Oh,
and by
gosh.
the time they were 5 years old, each of them knew how to run a family meeting. And it was because I wanted what you were talking about here, and that's what I do. So you said, most people don't realize it, but we're all coaches in some way. On the court, at
That's right.
home, in our communities. We lead through our words and our actions every day. If you can't coach yourself, how can you coach someone else? I really appreciate that. How did you come to realize that really, because what I hear you saying is the leadership needs to be developed within all of us.
Yeah, I think I look back, first of all, as a mother, my mother, and by the way, Judy Ryan sounds very Irish. I don't know if it's Irish or not, but Irish Catholic is, I grew up Irish Catholic. We had 5 kids, and my mother, she was at home with us, and my dad went off to work, and traditional Irish Catholic family on Long Island, and she led the household, and so there's you get married, you're young, you get married, you have kids, and all of a sudden this is all thrust upon you, and you become a leader. So you have leaders at home, and that's the most important institution that you can lead as a father or a mother. I think is the home, because that's where it all starts. And so I was blessed to have that. And then I do believe, one thing, if you listen to you introducing me, is I've had a lot of jobs and I've gotten fired a couple times. And so that's good and bad, right? Range of jobs is really good in what I do now as an executive coach, because I can relate to a lot of people in a lot of different roles. But when I went on a leadership journey after I lost my job at North Carolina, I realized that if you can't lead yourself and you don't know yourself, I talk about the 6 no's of leadership in my book, From Rebound from Pain to Passion. And the first no is know yourself, because if you don't know yourself, you cannot lead others.
Right.
And so it took me losing my job to get to know myself better. And I remember sitting with an executive coach at UVA, Carol Weber, and she had me take the Myers-Briggs assessment. And this was in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an assessment junkie,
Oh,
because
good. I am too.
I like to learn about
Yeah.
myself. And so
Yeah.
she, I went in there kind of depressed. I just lost my job at North Carolina as the head basketball coach. And someone recommended I meet with Carol. I met with her for half a day. She had me do the Myers-Briggs. And she said, well, let's get started. Your Myers-Briggs assessment is states that you're an ENTJ. And so I laugh now, because I said to myself, I've been called a lot of 4-letter words before, but never an ENTJ. And, so, and then she said, only 2% of the population are ENTJs. And,
Yes.
and I was sitting slouched down, depressed, um, feeling bad about myself. And then when she said only 2% of the population are ENTJs, I kind of sat up
Yeah.
and I thought, 2%, that's elite. And she
Yeah.
knew what I was thinking. And she said, no, 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 time out. You don't get it. That means that 98% of the population don't think like you think.
Right.
And that was a big aha moment for me, Judy, on self-awareness.
Yes. Yes.
And
I'm a similar IN T and F are very close. J, very similar to you, and it is also equally unusual. And also your temperament in other assessments probably follows along with that, because
oh
mine
yeah,
does.
and a
And
disc. I'm big into disc, and in a
mhm.
disc, I'm a DI, the driver, influencer, and
Yeah,
like I
I'm
can.
also a DI. I'm also a DI man. And so I understand what you're saying, because you're crossing that boundary of systems and relationships. You have head and heart. And
Yes.
that's probably what makes you an excellent leader and coach, because you care about the human system, but you also care about the effectiveness, almost like male female energy in a way,
Mhm.
in terms of knowing how to nurture, but also how to drive focus. So I love what I'm understanding about you, and I'm the same way. And if we don't manage ourselves, I'm curious about the other 5
Yeah.
no's.
Yeah. Well, I made up an acronym, as coaches do. I call it STEVIT, STEVIT. And I jokingly say it's a 7-foot 7-footer with grades from Eastern Europe. Because I Googled Stevitt, and like nobody in America was named Stevitt, and it was basically somewhere in Eastern Europe. And so I have to have this story that makes the name Stevitt. And so Stevit. So the first and the most important one is knowing yourself. The first T is knowing the team. And when I say the 6 knows of leadership, I'm talking about KNOWS.
Yes.
And then you got to know your environment. So the environment is tricky. A lot of places there's politics, a political environment surrounding your job. Then you've got to know your vision. And a lot of leaders don't know their vision. And if they know it, they don't know how to share it. And I think that you have to be consistent with sharing that vision. And there's so much carryover between sports and business. I say that business is a contact sport. As a head basketball coach, we were always casting the vision of winning a championship. Is that a championship effort? This practice doesn't get us to winning the championship. So you sold that. You sold that when you recruited the players and when you onboarded them and when you're training. And so you always had that vision of that's where we wanted to go. What did that look like? Well, it's cutting down nets. It was parades down Main Street. And that got people excited, right? And then the I in Stevitt was know your industry. As a leader, you need to know your industry and what are the trends. And I think a big part of a leader is anticipating what are the potential threats down the road. Is it an injury? Is it changing of rules? Is it changing of technology? Is it changing of styles of play? That applies to business too. And then lastly, and as important as the first S, as the S in Stevitt, is mining for the truth. Okay? Because you can't know yourself if you don't mine for the truth, right? So like, how do you know yourself? Well, you do the assessments, but 360s, or ask for real feedback in creating a safe environment, as you were touching on earlier. Because if you don't manage the truth will manage you right out the door.
Right. And other people can see the truth, whether you're dealing with it or not. What's interesting about your when you said anticipate what's going to happen, I see a lot of people that are kind of apathetic about what they can anticipate. You have to anticipate and care about addressing it, have conviction about addressing it. And that's what I'm hearing in even just the fact that you created this set of guidelines around, truth and environment. I'm curious what you have to say about environment, because I'm assuming that is climate. The way that we are the values that we're operating out of. I don't know if I'm correct on that.
Well, the environment is part of the environment is creating, when I first brought that up, I was thinking more of the political environment. But I think as it evolves, you have to create a safe environment, an environment of a culture, using core values. And to me, it starts with core values. You have a culture. It's either by default or it's intentional.
Yes.
And if you allow a culture to evolve, it'll go to the lowest common denominator,
it will.
Right. And so we had a speaker. There's a great speaker on that I've heard, and his book is terrific. It's Culture by Design. His name's David Friedman, and he brought it to light for me what I experienced as a player in high school and in college, having played for the legendary coach Dean Smith, who intentionally drove a culture. And that started with core values. We had 3 core values at North Carolina: play hard, play smart, play together. Pretty simple. And then you have to have behaviors, defined behaviors rooted in your core values, because sometimes people have values I call it wall art. You go into an office and you see it on the wall. And, first of all, if you ask people, what are your core values? They generally don't know. And they
Right.
say, it's on our website. And like, that does you no good. Okay.
Right.
And so I call that wall art. I say, okay, let's take it off the wall and operationalize it. And oh, by the way, you should only have 3 or 4 core values because you can't remember more than 3 or 4 items. That's why that's how the brain works. That's why phone numbers are 3 and 4 digits long, right? Not 7. And so let's take them off the wall and activate them. Well, how do you activate them? Well, what does respect look like? To me, mine are RTCP: respect, trust, commitment, positivity. So let's define respect, because Judy Ryan, who is from, the Missouri area, and Matt Doherty from North Carolina, respect may show up differently, or the way you grew up may show up differently than me. But I get to kind of set the rules a little bit. I ask for input, but as the leader, you can't delegate culture, because people realize it's not that important if you're delegating it. So to me, respect, I like, when you leave the conference room, take the trash, throw it in the garbage, and tuck your chairs under the table.
Yes.
Now that's me. That doesn't have to be you. But if it's my company, I'm the leader, that's important to me. And because I want it to look sharp for the next person that walks in, or if a recruit shows up, or, the next person wanting to use the conference room, they don't have to clean it up or, do anything to it. Those are little things. But as a coach, it comes down to little things like,
Yes.
are you in shape? Do you run the floor? Do you set good screens? Do you take care of the basketball? Do you clean the conference room? Do you tuck the chairs in? Do you take the trash out? Do you treat people, with a smile and a handshake and a nice gesture? Those are little things that are very important to me and my organization, and are rooted in the value of respect.
Yeah, I love so much of what you're talking about because, first of all, you said you can't delegate culture. You have to set culture. And I really believe that's true. A lot of times people will say to me, well, why do you go into a company and give them a culture model? And I'm like, because I know what kind of culture model works. And it's kind of like if you had a group of 10 parents in a room and you said, what's good parenting? They may all have completely different ideas of what that is. And you have to lead with what you believe is the culture that will work. And then you can delegate within that structure.
That's right.
So that people feel that sense of meaning and choice that they have within that structure. And I love that you also talked about having values and values that are memorable. I agree with you. A lot of it's just wall art. People don't even know their company's mission statement. It's some big, long, jargony thing that doesn't mean anything to anybody.
That's
So
right.
so yeah, those are really powerful things that you're talking about. And I think when you're firm and respectful, when you're firm and you have core values guiding things, people trust that because they feel that sense of honesty, that sense of this person knows the value that they're bringing to us. Is that your experience being a coach?
Well, I think what you recruit to your core values, you train to your core values, you discipline to your core values,
Mhm.
and to your point, firm and fair. And so if I recruit you, Judy, to my company and say, Judy, our core values are respect, trust, commitment, positivity. Tell me of a time when you showed great respect. Tell me of a time when you felt disrespected in work. And then, okay, here, I'm going to give you some sampling of what's important to us, in terms of respect. When you show up in the morning, I would like for you to say hello to the people you pass by in the office. When you leave a room, I'd like for you to leave the room nicer than you found it,
Yes.
including the restroom. Okay, I have a client I'm working with, and we're going over this exercise. And one of the things he mentioned was that like I start out with what drives you crazy, right? And then we'll do the flip side. So what he said, like right away, was, I hate when there's water around the sink in the bathroom. I'm like, okay, cool. So let's make that a behavior rooted in your value of, let's say, respect. Leave the room nicer than you found it. For example, wipe around the sink when you're done. And
Yes.
I can't unsee that now. Like when I leave my house in the morning, I can't not clean around the basin of my
Yeah.
sink.
Yeah.
And so that's what creates the habits that create a great culture. And so it's those little things that show respect, again, rooted in the core values.
Yes, and I think a lot of people jump in at the goals level and procedures and all those things. They don't think purpose, values, and visions
Mm.
first. And what you're also describing probably comes out of your Catholic upbringing, like it does mine, because I was raised Catholic as well. But we follow a psychology that teaches something called social interest, and it's what you're describing. It's making making sure that what you do, that you're considering the consequences you're causing one another. And I think that's why I brought in this, how could you be in a competitive sport or a competitive business and still have an honorable way of being with one another? And part of what's honorable is if you're considering that as I'm masterful, as I'm living my own pathway or my own company or my own team, how can I make sure that I'm conscious of what I'm causing others? And that's what
Right.
I hear you describing. And you're right. Once you've learned how to become conscious of what you're causing others, you start becoming more conscious of it, which is,
Yeah. You
like
call
you
that
said,
social, did you call it social interest?
it's called social interest. It's a term out of Adlerian psychology, which is Alfred Adler's psychology, but it's often missing in individuals and in teams because they haven't been taught how to consider what they're causing other people. I remember one time, I'll just tell you this real quick, a true story. I was at the grocery store, and this little boy, he's probably 4 or 5, said to his mom, "Why can't we park in this spot? It's right by the front door." And it was a handicap spot. And I wanted to see what she would say to him. She took him up to the handicap sign and she said, "Son, do you see where it says $500? Tow away? That means we'll get in trouble if we park here and we'll have to pay $500. And I thought, wow, that is really sad, because what she could have said is,
You
see that
missed.
picture of a little person that's in a wheelchair?
Yep.
We're such a cool culture. We're a community that has each other's back, and we make sure that people that can't walk as good as us can get in that store. That would be teaching social interest, not just the consequences to me.
That's right. No, I agree with you. Yeah. And my mother-in-law was handicapped, and we used to really and it chafes me today when somebody's parking in a handicap. Um,
Yeah.
so it's social interest, yeah, the consideration of others.
Of what we're
Um,
causing them, of what consequences are we causing them?
explain that more. Explain that
Well,
more.
if I'm behaving in a certain way, like we have this one story, I'll send it to you later. But it's about this 8th grader who comes into a classroom meeting and he's been bullied by his homeroom teacher over a peace pledge, if you can believe that. And so, yeah, so I said, "Do you want peace?" Well, I'll just tell you the story. I said, "Do you want peace?" And he says, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Well, do you want it with this teacher who's bullying you?" And he says, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Well, are you willing to look at where you might be doing, have a part in all this, being doing war with her?" And he's like, "Me, I'm the one being bullied." And I said, "That's true, but you're the one that wants peace and does not have peace with her. Are you willing to look at your role in it?" And he says,
Right.
"Well, I guess." And I said, "Are you saying bad things about her behind her back ever?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, I hate her." I said, "Gossip and hate, anything warlike about that?" And he's
Right.
like, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you ever try to go to her and have a conversation with her about it?" And he says, "Well, no, we're all afraid of her." And I said, "Did you know that if you're afraid of somebody, you're in attack mode to them?" And he said, "No, what do you mean?" And I said, "If a dog comes rushing up to you and it's vicious, if you
Right.
get more afraid of that dog, does it get more vicious or less vicious?" And he says, "Well, it gets more vicious." And I said, "Yeah, why?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "It's because when you are afraid of that dog knows you've got it in the monster box in the
Right.
enemy camp, and it's going to return the favor. And that's what people do also." So he said, and so I said, "Now that you see you've been hating, gossiping, and being fearful of her, all in an example of being against peace. What do you want to do now? And he goes, well, now I want to go talk to her. And what was really cool about it is that other kids started saying, because this was an 8th grade classroom,
Wow.
I'll go with you because I've been doing war with this teacher also. And everybody raises that level of values, but we don't learn that naturally. He thought of himself as a victim of that teacher, and in some regards he was, but he also had the ability to not only have self-awareness, but self-management, not only awareness of the dynamic he was part of, but how to manage that dynamic. And that's what I hear you saying in your work, is you're actually teaching people practical habits so that they're not only aware, but they're changing their behavior, and probably almost intuitively because of that N in your Myers-Briggs. You're probably
Yeah.
intuitively doing it to help them have the satisfaction of what they're causing one another.
Yeah. That's amazing that the 8th graders took to your conversation with that level of maturity.
They really did. And it was partly because the teacher was leading with the Adlerian approach we use. But what's interesting about it is when I've told that story in corporate keynote presentations, I've had people come up to me and say, why would you have an 8th grader go confront his teacher like that? And I was like, first of all, he was intending peace with her. That's very different than confrontation.
Right.
Second of all, that child is going to go away to college in 4 years. Is he supposed to automatically know how to manage relationships with authority figures if he doesn't learn how to respectfully do that now?
Right.
And so, and also, if I had pampered him, he would have just felt like he was this little weak person. So it's really interesting how you are, I'm sure, bringing personal responsibility to people, but a lot of
Yeah.
times they don't want it.
Well, I call them crucial conversations.
Yeah.
As a leader, it's all about crucial conversations, because you have to address behavior. So we talked about, to me, the 3 big steps with driving a championship culture, which is a talk I give, is
Mhm.
core values, setting your core values, creating your behaviors, list of behaviors.
Mhm.
And then the toughest part, those 2 are kind of pretty, right? That's kind of fun. All right, now, tough guy, you want to hold people accountable. Now, that's the part that people miss on. Why? Because they don't like confrontation. They
Mhm.
don't like to hold people accountable. However, what I've learned, it's a lot easier to hold people accountable when you recruit them to your core values and behaviors, and you say, we called it at North Carolina, the Carolina way. It's the Carolina way. It's the Judy Ryan way. It's the whatever way. And this is the way we do things. So now when I was a young head coach and I wanted to prove and show everybody, and I was in charge, and I was a transactional coach, not a transformational coach. And I was insecure. When I was challenged, I barked back. And then when I went on my leadership journey, and I was off 2 years, and I got back to coaching, and I really implemented the core values. One of my favorite coaching experiences was with a young man at SMU who had been missing class. We had our core values then of RTC, respect, trust, commitment. I called him in the conference room where we had a big limestone with a nameplate on it that said SMU basketball and the year and RTC, and had all the players sign it. And so it was an operating agreement. And he came in, and I said, to him, what are our core values? And he said, RTC, respect, trust, commitment. He knew him. I
Mhm.
said, did you sign that stone? He said, yes. I said, well, that's an operating agreement. You agree to uphold these core values of respect, trust, commitment. He said, yes. I said, well, I understand you're not going to class. And he dropped his head. I said, we have a rule of mandatory class attendance. And he nodded his head. I said, well, you violated the core value of respect because you didn't respect the rule. And 2, you violated trust, that I thought you were going to class, but you weren't. So you broke my trust. And then thirdly, you're obviously not committed to getting an education. And so, Judy, I went old school with them. I said, if you were me, what would you do? Just like maybe your mother or father did to you. And you usually give them a bigger punishment, a harsher punishment than they would had in mind. And he said, oh man, he said, I'd suspend me. I said, okay, you're suspended. And we walked out the door. And I think about what he would say, or the players would ask him when he got to the locker room. It'd be like, oh, what happened? Well, I bet your coach ripped you. And I'd like to think he said, no, coach was actually kind of cool. And I kind of suspended myself based
Yeah.
on our core values.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I love about what you're saying, and I guess I want to say it just because I say it all the time in my own work, is in a sense, you had a conversation and created the conditions where he held himself accountable. I don't
That's
even
right.
like the phrase personally of holding others accountable, because the reality is, at best, when a person is 100% accountable, it's because they are choosing to be. So how do you create the conditions and the conversations? You did by having a conversation about the values, having it a signed agreement, having everybody understand what that means behaviorally, and then asking him Socratic questions. That's how we got those eighth graders to think the way they were thinking, because we would ask them, do you want peace? Oh, you do want peace. Do you want to look at your part? Oh, do you want to look at were you doing this? Now that you know this, what do you want to do? Socratic questions are what you did. The only difference between what I would do is possibly, I think that there is a thing people can do to hold themselves accountable. I'm just a little bit new school, if you will, on giving people something to restore. Okay, you didn't go
Give me
to
an example. Give me an example.
well, if with that person, it might be, what will you do to make up your studies? And then feed back into the system that you kind of betrayed. Like my son, when he was, my oldest is a son. When he was little, he got it in his head he was going to go out on a hot summer day with one of his friends and get that tar that gets soft on the road and put it
Yeah.
in a couple people's mirrors on their cars. Well, his
Ooh,
sister told me
ooh.
about it. And I got the two boys together and I said, hey, here's what we're going to do. You know that our family, we had a purpose and a core values, our core values. We're going to go down to those three houses that you did this at, and you're just going to go up to the door and let them know what you did and ask them what you can do. Tell them that you're going to clean it off, ask them what you can do to make up for it. And they did. And luckily the people, are unluckily, whatever, they were gracious enough to say, no problem if you take care of it, no problem. But then I said to the boys, you violated the effect of this community. Like, you
Right.
violated the community. What's something you can do to restore the
Right.
balance within the community? And they agreed that they would take trash bags around for an hour and clean up the streets in the neighborhood. Because it was, to us, it was, I think when you give somebody restorative, they're more likely to think about what they did to the community as opposed to what they have to suffer.
Yeah.
That's the
I
only
love
thing
it.
that
I
I'm.
love it. I love it. This is what I love about being with you and other people, is I get to learn. And here I am. I'm taking notes while you're talking about restorative, and how can I apply that? How could I have applied it, but how can I apply it going forward? So thank you for sharing
Well,
that.
Coach, you did something amazing because you helped him hold himself accountable. And that is so much further than most people do. Most people are all about doing it from the outside in. And so, how did you learn? Who affected your ability to operate from the inside out? And this thing keeps popping in my head. I read about how when you were young, you didn't want to go to, I think it was a job or something, and you talked your parents into letting you go to basketball camp. I'm like, you had a lot of influence. You had that DI going on.
That's
So,
funny. You did your research.
yes.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, I was in grammar school, and my sister, we were middle class. My dad owned a Pepsi route. My mom didn't work outside the home. So all our family had summer jobs, lifeguards and, different things. And I'm like, this is where I had my vision, and my goals was to play college basketball and get a college scholarship. So in grammar school, I said, listen, I did have a newspaper route. I delivered the paper in the morning so I could play wanted to play in the afternoons. but I said to I sold to my parents that, listen, if I work hard enough, I'm going to get a college scholarship. So, versus working to save money for college, if I am working as a basketball player, I will get my college paid for. So it's kind of the same thing. And I sold it pretty, pretty
Yeah,
hard, and
yeah.
it worked.
What I see in you in that story is somebody that was already internally motivated and influential. And I'm sure that there are probably people that you could look back on and say to me, Judy, that's because this, and this happened. But I also see that you knew how to have effective relationships with your parents, which were your authority figures. When you talked about your 6 no's, we have a little bit different formula, but it's similar. It's first you have to manage the relationship with yourself, but then
Right.
you have to know how to manage the relationship with authority figures, because you can't be an authority with other people if you're not able to be in right relationship, like that 8th grader was learning to do with his teacher. But you were
Yeah.
doing it with your parents. You were going to them and selling them
Yeah.
on, I've got a really good idea. And you must have had really exceptional parents that they wanted to hear that they were
Well,
kids.
my sisters might say I was spoiled. Um, I had 3 older sisters, um, and a younger brother, and he was about 5 years, 6 years younger. But I think that when I believe in something, I can sell it. And when I worked after college, I got cut by the NBA. I worked on Wall Street, and I didn't believe in. I was a bond salesman. I didn't believe in it really. I didn't love it. Didn't got to college as a college coach. I could sell things I believe in. And when I was younger, I believed, I was determined that I was going to be a good basketball player. I was tall. I was coordinated, and I was passionate. I dreamed about it. I loved basketball. I quit playing baseball in the 6th grade. Everyone played baseball growing up where I grew up. My dad was a minor league pitcher, but once he introduced me to basketball in 4th grade, I just loved it because I could work on it by myself and lose myself in the game and felt like, okay. And this is a book I read. Bill Bradley, who's from Missouri, it was a player for the Knicks and a senator, U.S. senator, played at Princeton. And he, in his book, Life on the Run, here I am, 6th grade. He said, if you're not working on your game as hard as somebody else, when you two meet, that person will have the advantage. And
Yeah.
right then I quit playing baseball, and my dad was good with it. And so I tell people now, your life's impacted by 3 things: the people you meet, the books you read, and the trauma in your life. And, the first 2 you can control. Who do you want to meet? Well, you can meet them through podcasts. You can meet them through books. You can meet them through movies, or you can just old fashioned, I'm going to meet that person. And then the books you read, it's unlimited, right? And then the trauma in your life, um, some of that we should bring upon ourselves. What do I mean by that? Like, trauma is going to happen. I lost my job at North Carolina. But sometimes looking back, if I would have brought trauma upon myself before I lost my job, I might not have lost my job. What do I mean by that? Is by asking people for feedback in a safe environment, whether it be through a 360, a conversation, a survey, a mentor. And at that time in my life, I probably wasn't emotionally mature enough or aware to realize my blind spots, and so creating trauma, I do that with clients of mine through 360s, surveys, and disc assessments.
Yeah, I love your humility, because life is a process of growth. But what I also want to say is, even as a young man, you had strong passion, and you were not a cynical person. You found the meaningfulness in something from the inside out, and you had parents that did not disregard that and say, no, that's not our picture of you.
Right.
Um, a lot of people are operating from the outside in because there's so much control and domination. That's why this show has the tagline shifting power over and power under
Yeah.
to power within and power between. And what I absolutely love about your story is that you were influenced probably from the books and your parents and possibly some coaches or teachers
Coaches. Yes.
that said what you believe in is what you want to cultivate. Like they weren't all about do it for me. Do it because
No.
I'm going to dangle a carrot. Do it because I'm going to judge you good or bad. You did it because you could go off and do it and it had meaning for you. And I
Yeah.
can tell you how many people don't even know what they want. And they're so cynical because it's like a protection around them.
Well, wow. I'm getting goosebumps as you talk, Judy. You know, as a coach, especially in sports, like I tell young players, you want the exposure. Okay, great. You want the exposure. Be careful. You might get exposed. And you've got to be okay with that. Like
Yes.
I have hit some game-winning shots and I have missed some game-winning free throws.
Right.
And now I get exposed and am face ridicule. But I'm okay with that because I chose to do that. I chose to play. I was passionate about the game and I was allowed to fail. Like it's
Yes.
okay to fail. The best players fail a lot and it's public. And so, one of my favorite quotes is from Nelson Mandela. He says, I never lose. I either win or I learn.
I love
And
that.
oh, it's awesome quote, right? And so like having that mentality, and you say, listen, show me somebody who's never lost. They haven't tried very hard.
Right. They have no
They
courage.
haven't tried, they haven't stretched themselves. Our country was made on people who took risk and gambled and you live a fulfilling life that way by saying, I had some wonderful experiences versus I sat in a corner and didn't risk anything because I wanted to
Played
play
it
it
safe.
safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what again, and this is the way my brain works. You're describing what we call the second internal motivator, choice. You said, I chose these things. And you already had that respect, trust, and commitment. You had the courage to do something, even if you were going to fail at it.
Yeah,
It requires, it's so funny because for years I said a prayer that was, please release me from the need for love, approval, and acceptance from others. It doesn't mean I didn't want those things.
that's
I
right.
certainly like those things. But if I'm overly worried about those things, I'm not free. I'm not only
That's right.
free, not free in my own life, I'm not free to be in service to you because
Right.
I'm too worried about what you're going to think of me. So you're really, who do you attribute in your life that taught you your passion was good, your initiative was good, your choices are important to make? Who gave you those
Yeah.
sense of
I was
self?
blessed at a young age to be influenced by a couple of young men. At the time, they see like old men, but they're only, when you're 14, like you think someone who's 18 is old, right? And so there's a guy named Paul Eibler who was a friend of my older sister's, played college basketball, and Paul is probably, 8 years older than me. And then Bob McKillop, my high school coach, who coached at Davidson, coached Steph Curry. He was my high school coach for 2 years. And those guys taught me to dream and taught me to push myself. And like anything is achievable if you dream about it and you put in the work. And so I really, went after things. I wanted to be the first freshman to play on a varsity in high school. I did. I wanted to play at a place like North Carolina, and I did. I remember, and I wrote this in my book. There was a great player who I was on a summer team with, and going into my senior year, he had already played a year in at Louisville. His name was Rodney McCray, and we were on the summer tour, and he said, well, what schools you think about going to? I said, well, I'm thinking about going to North Carolina. And he said to me, I was sitting on the bus next to him. and he big guy. And he said, "You think you could play there?" And I just kind of kept my mouth shut and nodded. And because, I wasn't a super athlete, I was a smart player. I was tall, I was skilled, but he questioned whether I could play there. And it was funny because my first year I was a sixth man on a team that went to the Final Four. And then my second year, I started on a national championship team in a Final Four that Rodney McRae played in at Louisville, and they lost. So I say in the book, yes, Rodney, I could play at North Carolina, and so those doubts like fuel. And yet I didn't achieve my ultimate dream was playing in the NBA. I got cut. I didn't make it.
Yeah.
And that's hard, right? And some people can make fun of you for that, but like those people, Theodore Roosevelt's that quote about man in the arena.
Yes, I love that. Yes.
That's what this is all what we're talking about right here, right?
Yeah,
So,
you have a life that you should be proud of. And what's interesting is I was wondering, I think I'm assuming, but weren't you like quite a bit older than Michael Jordan when you were in in basketball with him?
1 year older.
Oh, just
Yeah.
1 year. Because I was wondering if you had an influence on him.
Well, in in the book that's over my shoulder here, he wrote the forward, and he wrote a very gracious forward, and very nice, and talked about the things that he felt he learned from me when he was a freshman, and which is very nice of him. So, I was looking back, I realized, even though I played a lot, like I started and I played a lot of minutes, and, but I still didn't really maybe appreciate the value that I brought till now. Then I became a coach, and I realized, oh yeah, you need that guy on the floor who's that glue guy who can move the ball, take care of the ball, knows the plays, can get people, the coach on the floor. That was my role. And I love playing it with the great players, the great talents, Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, Kenny Smith, Brad Doherty, James Worthy. I mean, I played with some great, great players, Jimmy Black, Al Wood. So blessed to be a part of it.
Well, you brought excellence and you surrounded yourself with excellence, and that's always such a winning combination. I would like to spend a little bit of time before we have to close this show, asking you, because you kind of mentioned here, I didn't make the NBA. Some people could make fun of that, but
Yeah.
I bet you learned a lot through disappointment, discouragement, trying and failing, being able to do that without losing face, without losing friends, without losing support. And also how that, so I want to ask you, what are the things that you feel that were tests for you that shaped you into a better leader? And also, what kind of compassion or strength did it provide you in terms of what you cause for other people as a result?
Yeah, thank you. Losing my job at North Carolina, um, put me on that leadership journey, and it made me more aware of emotional intelligence, self-awareness. Um, I had in 2003, when I took a class taught by Fran Johnson at Wharton, just a business executive class, 1 week. And it was on emotional intelligence, and I never heard of emotional intelligence before then. And I went up to her after class. I said, like, oh, I need more of what you're teaching. And she, knew who I was because she followed sports, and and I ended up on my own dime flying from Charlotte to Philadelphia to meet with her as my executive coach once a month. I fly up in the morning, meet with her, fly home. Fly up in the morning the next month, meet with her, fly home. And so that emotional intelligence, emotional awareness, self-awareness was really huge for me, and something that I think I tried to do a better job of understanding, that, to connect. Like you have to prime with someone's heart. You have to connect with their heart.
Yeah.
And that I was a transactional coach, and I like to think I became more of a transformational coach.
I
And
think you did. I think you
that
did. That's what I meant when I said you have head and heart. You have um, that firm, focused masculine, but you also have that nurturing. I know feminine, masculine sounds like it's all about gender, but it's about our characteristics.
Yeah.
And you, it sounds like you were forged in the fire of both the
Yeah.
success and the failure. Or I don't even like the word failure, your successes and your lessons, because everything is an opportunity if we allow it to be.
That's right.
Allow it to
And,
push us.
and I think one thing that, a couple of things, it knocked me to my knees. And I like to say, when you're on your knees, what should you do? You should pray. Right. And so, instead of becoming bitter, I like to think I became better, and
Yes.
hopefully I became a better Christian, because I prayed more and try to understand, God, why, why, and I think I know why. And you talked earlier, like, to know your purpose on this earth, to figure that out, and then to find a career in that purpose is really magical. I learned many lessons, and on that leadership journey, and really what I want to do is, as learn my purpose, understand my purpose is to teach and coach. And now I'm teaching and coaching business executives and helping them avoid the landmines that I stepped on. And when I see that coming, and I can steer them and coach them and help them navigate the rough seas of leadership, it's very fulfilling work, Judy.
I know, because I am the same way. I love what I do as well. And I wish everybody on the planet could. I remember one of my kids saying to me, I wish I had your work ethic. And I said, you do. You stay
Yeah,
up all night and watch video games. And she goes, but that's fun. And I said, so is a job you love. I
that's
wanted to
right.
say a couple of things because we're going to need to close this soon. One of them is that not only did you learn about emotional intelligence, you did what we call the third intrinsic motivator. You got real committed to your competency, not only your competency on the court, but your competency in the way that you were going to do your life, even to the extreme of getting on an airplane and flying out there every month. That was your commitment to your internal motivator. The other thing I want to say is, you say that your purpose is to teach and coach. We would say that's the value, the behavior that you use. Your actual purpose is to help people live lives of excellence and success. And you do that through teaching and coaching, because you describe it as, I help them get past their the minds that I had to blow up in,
Right.
because I want them to have an easier, more successful, happier, more effective, more competent life. Like my mission purpose statement sounds a little bit more like that. It's, I want to create a world. I choose to create a world in which all people can love their lives. You are choosing to create a world where people can live into their highest dreams of themselves. That's how I would describe your purpose. And the way you do it is teaching and coaching from real world experience that you have.
Gotcha.
For
Gotcha.
that, what I want to say as we wrap this up, Coach, is I appreciate that you have shifted your power to be power within and power for people, power between people. And yes, you're using it to be a masterful coach. You've been a masterful player. You've probably been a masterful husband and father. And what
My wife's downstairs. You want to get her on here? that might not go well for me. No, I'm kidding.
So you are a role model for the world. And that's what we need, because this program is about when everyone wins. And you are committed to helping everyone win, and not from a place of everything has to be perfect, but that you are powerful, that you are strong, that you can use your power for your own good, but also the good of the world. And I just really am excited to share this episode with the viewers out there. And I encourage them to go to your book, which we didn't get to talk a lot about, but go to see his book on rebound from pain to passion, leadership lessons learned. I also encourage people to go to your book list because I looked through that and I love
you
a lot
did.
of those books that you've recommended. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate so much your willingness to be in service to this program to help create win-win in the world. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, Judy, you and I, you and I could talk forever. I love to learn from people, and you have wonderful experiences. And sitting down, I'm taking notes: social interest, restorative, violate the community, consequences causing, and I just love to. I want to get better because, like you, I'm passionate about what I do. And I know the better I get, then the better I can serve the
Yes,
people I work with.
you are about serving, and I really appreciate that. So I look forward to, hopefully we'll stay in touch and we can continue
Yes,
to grow. And thank you again. I don't want to make you late for dinner. So
that's okay. Thank you. And Stefan, make sure you make me look as good as possible. I know that's a full-time job. So thank you so much, guys. Judy, it's been a pleasure.
Same here. You've been listening to When Everyone Wins, where we're shifting power over and under to power within and between. I'm Judy Ryan, your transformation talk radio host. Tune in each second and fourth Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific time to learn new concepts and tools and listen to conversations I have with thought leaders and change agents. You'll also see real-world applications of what I'm covering so that you experience the power of the concepts and tools I share. In each episode, I bring you my knowledge from decades in workplace culture transformation and leadership development as the founder and CEO of LifeWork Systems. I invite you to call in with your unique stories and questions. The path to ensure that everyone wins depends on our ability as people to create a life we love and help others do the same. For more information, visit lifeworksystems.com.